Okay, now we will try and solve this problem using the least cost cell method. So here I have the table ready for me. So the first column, which is period of manufacturing, shows you in which period you are actually manufacturing your goods. This column shows from where you're using your units. For example, are you using it in the beginning inventory? Are you using the beginning inventory to satisfy your demand? Are you producing them in your regular time? Are you producing them in your overtime, or whether you're producing in your subcontract? Now, if you're using your beginning inventory in the first period itself, then there is no need of paying any storage charges, and hence the cost per unit will be 0. If the beginning inventory you're using in the second period, then you'll have to pay the charges for storing the inventory for an entire period 1, and that's why for period 2 the cost is 1. Similarly, for period 3, if you're using beginning inventory in period 3, then you'll have to pay the charges for storing them for entire 2 periods, and hence you have to pay $2 per unit. Regular time, if whatever you're producing in the first period you're using in the first period itself, then you have to pay $60 per unit. Similarly, second period it will be 61 because you have to pay your regular time charges plus the charges for storing them for one whole period, that is $1. So $60 plus 1 will be 61. Similarly, 60 plus charges for storing them for 2 periods, that's why it is 60 plus 2, 62. Same analogy applies for overtime and for subcontract also. Now we have seen that we have not written anything here, which we will see in the later section. Voila! Now here, as you can see, the same logic applies to period 2 also. Whatever you're manufacturing in period 2, if you're using in period 2, then you'll have to pay just the regular time, that is $60 per unit. If what you're producing in period 2, you're using it in period 3, then you'll have to pay 61 because 60 for regular time charge and $1 per item for storing for one entire period. That's why 61. Same thing for overtime and same thing for subcontract. But what about period 1? Now, if you're satisfying period 1 demand in period 2, that means if whatever you're manufacturing in period 2 you're using to satisfy the demand of period 1, then you will have to pay, in addition to the regular time, you'll have to pay more because you have made the customers wait for one entire period. So that more is your back order cost of $3. So the charges for regular time will be 60 plus back order cost, which is 63. Here will be 83 and here will be 93. Voila again. Now let's use the same analogy for the period 3 also. Voila. So if what you're producing in period 3, you're using it in period 3, then you have to pay the regular time cost of 60 per unit, 80 per unit for overtime, and subcontract 90 per unit. But if you're satisfying the period 2 demand by the units that you have manufactured in period 3, then you have to pay the regular time, and in addition to that you'll have to pay back order cost of $3, and hence this becomes 63, this becomes 83, and this becomes 93. Because making the customers wait for one entire period has cost you in some way or the other. Similarly, if the units that you're producing in period 3 you're using to satisfy the demand of period 1, then you'll have to pay the regular time plus twice as much as your back order cost, because they have been waiting for 2 periods, and per period it's $3. So this becomes 60 plus 3 plus 3, which is 66, 86 and 96. Okay, right there. Now the demand for period 1 has to be written at the end. The demand for period 2 has to be written at that end, and same thing for period 3. Now the demand for each period has been given 550, 700 and 750. So let's write them down here. So as we can see here, we have written the demand for period 1, 2 and 3, that is 550, 700 and 750. And apart from that, we have filled the total capacity column also, which is 100 for beginning inventory. Beginning inventory has to be used for the entire year, and that's the reason why it doesn't come in period 2 and in period 3. So it only has to be written in the beginning of your entire aggregate plan. Now let's see what's the sum of the total capacity for the entire year. Printf sum. So now the sum of your total capacity is 2900, and the sum of your demand is it's just 2000. Now as we can see, the total demand is not equal to your total capacity, and least cost method or Vogel's approximation can be used only when your demand and your capacity are matching. So to make them match, you are creating a dummy demand, which is called as unused capacity, and the balance of them you're writing that down. So obviously here you'll have to write 90, and now it's balanced. And we can mention here unused capacity. The unused capacity always has 0 charges because they are unused, so it's always with you, and that's why these have to be considered to be 0 cost columns. So now that we know the cost per unit in each cell, and now that we have balanced the demand with the total capacity, we can now use the least cost cell method. Now if due to some reason if your demand was more than your supply, then you'll have to create an extra dummy row to match the demand and your capacity.